away there.
Yeah, I would maybe let Sean start, and then we can have Jordan fill in any details that Sean might feel relevant. Does that sound good, Sean? And if you're talking, Sean, you're on mute.
Still seems to be mute.
Maybe he has stepped away. Let's ping him in the chat. Did we lose him? Maybe he's reconnecting.
Yeah, he's just not being responsive, so I have no idea.
Yeah.
So I mean, let's start at the root issue here, which is not a technical one, but a resourcing one. Is there anything that you can say on that, Scott?
So we have Jordan dedicated to working on atomics and ONOS config, and Jordan is here. We have Thomas. Thomas is mostly doing other things, but we have Thomas's availability if we need him as well. We could pull him in. I think what Jordan has been working on is mostly been for the last week or so been deployment related issue with ONOS with atomics, which I don't think is going to directly fix any of the issues that you're having. It had to deal with deploying atomics on Red Hat OpenShift, and we had to get that done. Jordan, is there anything you want to fill in about what you've been working on?
Yeah, so I would say I think we're definitely in a lot better position to get these issues resolved, and sort of committed to that now. So so that's a very good thing. But so I expect that I'll be dealing with these deployment issues for another week or two, and then I should after that be able to get back on these bugs full time and try to fix them pretty quickly. Or potentially I might be able to start working on it sooner, but we'll see. But yeah, I think we should pretty soon be able to resolve this.
And the latest thing you were working on, the deployments under OpenShift, is that's in testing now, and is there anything else needs to be? I mean, do we need to go back and do any validation testing to make sure that doesn't break anything? Or are you confident that that is fine?
Yeah, I'm really uncertain about how this testing is going to go, because yeah, there's just it's the issue that I'm dealing with is sort of has been difficult for me to reproduce, which is why I've been trying to get some resources to try
right
to
yeah, you don't actually have an OpenShift.
So yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to estimate how much that's going to impact the timeline, but I'm going to try to get to these bugs as quickly as possible. That's all.
Yeah, but you could verify that the changes you've made for OpenShift support don't break anything anywhere else. I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I have done that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
all the normal stuff works.
Okay, good.
I'll be submitting a pull request for that once. I just want to test it on OpenShift first and make sure it works there also, and I'll be submitting a pull request for that, and then I can follow up that with the bug fixes.
Okay, so yeah, if you end up blocked waiting for someone to get you an OpenShift, then you could start working on these other bug fixes in parallel.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I think a useful thing to do would be to make sure Jordan knows what tests that we need. What tests ONF was having trouble with, so we know how to reproduce this, and we know how he can verify. Once Jordan does fix it, whether the issue is resolved.
Yeah, and actually I've been, so while I've been waiting for some OpenShift resources, I've been working on the tests already, and I would really like to start adding a lot more tests. So yeah, any specific scenarios that I can add tests for, I would like to do that.
Yeah, I think having some of our own tests in-house on scalability, I think would be beneficial.
Yeah.
So on that front, just because I just was reminded of that reminds me of it, just on the GS Labs, remember the intent is that GS Labs is going to start building out some QA resources for us. Big question there is, well, exactly what is it that we test and what configurations do we build? I had a conversation with folks at Khajiit, and they were, and Laura, you can maybe speak to this, and I realize I'm getting a little bit out of order, but I think it's very related. Making some of Khajiit's test scenarios, especially ones that stressed scalability, available to the community, and then we can work with GS Labs to instantiate them. So jumping to that just for a moment, Laura, is there anything to say about that?
Yeah, check your inbox. I sent the large customer configuration profile and testing specs over to you earlier this morning, like just an hour ago. So all good.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yep.
So I will get that posted somewhere, and then so that everyone can have a look at it. Maybe even yet during the call, but while we're doing this, let's not. So jumping back for now to where Jordan is, I don't know if there's any more to say there. I don't know, Scott, if you can speak to this, but Atomics and Onos config are, I mean, the three things: Rock, build on Onos config, build on Atomics. It is that combination that is of interest to Intel. I just wanted to make sure, and as opposed to other use cases, or maybe there are also other use cases, but at least that use case is mainstream.
Yeah, I mean, I always have to be careful what I say, but it is what we would call the rock stack that Jordan is working on. So it's, you know, GUI, API, Onos config, Atomics, you know, what you would traditionally think of as the rock stack.
Thanks. That's, yeah, I just wanted to confirm that. All right. And that I assume Thomas is available as needed there as well, just from the Onos, at least from the Onos config point of view.
Yeah, we primarily have him doing other things, but I would assume, you know, if Jordan needs help and if Thomas has expertise in things, you know, we could task Thomas with some work there as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just, you know, we'll during our Scrum process, we'll you know, figure out the resourcing, and whatever bubbles up needs developers. You know, that's the pool of people we have is Jordan and Thomas.
Thanks. All right, now is anything else there? I don't know that we have any other results or anything to say there. It doesn't sound like.
I don't think so. We do have. I thought I saw Sean back. I don't know if you can talk, Sean.
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep.
Yeah, I gave while you were offline. Yeah, and thanks for diagnosing the issue. But while you were offline, Jordan and I gave, you know, a brief status update that he's working on, you know, Redshift related stuff. That is wrapping up. That is expected not to have any regressions, breaking anything else in any other context, and that Jordan will soon be ready to start working on these other bugs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you have anything to add to that,
no, really, that's all I would have had.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. So with respect to GS Labs, sub point 1 is a really important one, which is that we now have a testing scenario from Khajiit. So we will make that available to everybody, both so that, you know, Jordan knows what it is and that GS Lab knows what it is. anyone else have any information on how things are going with GS Labs and getting them online and tasked? And I was out of the loop most of last week, so I have no information myself.
Yeah, I have a bit of information to Timon, but I was also partially out of the loop as well. But they're still in kind of the bootstrapping kind of mode of getting access to resources, so things up and running, and they have instantiated, Aether in the box and some kind of small configurations there, but it's still, kind of early steps, and we need to kind of get into kind of an agile Scrum kind of laying down weekly targets and kind of helping to kind of move the effort forward. And so it would, we should think about how best to do that, because it's not necessarily just an interaction between ONF and GS Lab. This could be more community based, or we could pull that activity into the TST here perhaps, or we should be willing to think a little more creatively about how to sort of merge that resource in with this effort here.
Yeah. So I guess we could spend part of this call in Jira, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess from my point of view, getting, and I haven't had a chance to look at it, but getting the Khajiit scenarios distributed, let's put that on major topic for next time.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing that I wonder about is that sort of the direction we've been taking with the test and verification setup is to go from small setups towards more complex. It's sort of the on-ramp approach. And yet Khajiit is kind of on the complex end of the spectrum with the centralized cloud.
Well, I don't think we have to go that far. I mean, I would agree that that might be too big a step, but my understanding is maybe even on Laura, remind me, even on a single control server, there might be some testing, scalability testing to do.
Yeah, I mean, we only have results for our what we call the large customer deployment model, which in the field looks like 30,000 UEs. So we don't have exactly. So yeah.
Yeah. So sorry. So now, yeah, let's talk through it since we have you here, just a little bit anyway. So it's 30K UEs. What I was wondering is, from a Aether point of view, how many resources you throw at 30K UEs? Is it a cluster of 3 servers, or?
We haven't been able to test it just because some software licensing issues with the simulated software. So we've tested up to 10,000. And right now, I mean, I sent all this so we can look at the info I sent over. It's a 3 server bare metal solution, cups config. Yeah.
All right. So it's a 3. That's what I was it's a 3 server configuration.
That's what Anthos requires, bare minimum. So yes.
So did I hear you right, Anthos?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the base Kubernetes.
So are you separating the edge and the core?
Cups, correct.
Cups, and so it's got sort of an Anthos edge.
So where is the rock running? Is it running on one of the spread across those 3 nodes?
Jonathan, keep me honest here.
Excuse me. Google Kubernetes engine in Google Cloud.
Thank you.
Okay, so AMP, all right, our rock stack, which let's just call it that, running in Google.
Yeah.
All right, so we do have a multi cloud or hybrid cloud scenario here, which, as Timon was pointing out, is at the high end of the configurations. our initial plan was to work from small up, back up to large so that we could reconstruct, you know, one building block at a time, everything that used to be there.
Instead of GCP there, I'd say GKE.
Oh, well, all right, so good. So that GKE could be running on a, can we imagine a single site with three node cluster? Well, I mean, I'm having not yet read what you sent me. I line a little blind here, but I think this is the big issue that we need to work through and this coming week and then discuss next week in terms of how to plan for it. If it is a quote unquote simple matter of bringing up, and it could be RKE maybe from a testing point of view, which is the default Aether Kubernetes, and then bring up 3 servers and run AMP, I would say AMP, the rock stack there. Can you say what's driving the workload? Is that?
It's the size of the customer.
No, I mean, what emulator are you running to drive the workload on it?
DS test.
I don't know DS test.
Yeah, it's just a simulator.
Right. So, I
And
mean,
that TSS simulates UEs.
Yeah, and ran. It can. Yeah, we use it mainly for UEs.
Does it simulate the eNode B, Keynode B?
Yes.
Yeah.
We mainly use it for UE simulation. So I mean, we partner directly with GS Lab. They're our dev shop. So they set, well, so they set all of this up for us. They're the ones who did the scalability testing and built out the profile. So.
all right. So they're certainly capable.
Yeah.
The tricky thing here is maybe that's an arrangement you have with them, and so the expertise is there, but we would want to build out I don't know if this really matters, but I'm, you know, a community QA. DS test may be perfectly fine there. But that might be one of the, I mean, between Anthos and how you're testing it might be not quite aligned with the way that the open source version's progressing. Hyman, any other thoughts there?
I think you're asking the right questions. I think that, I think the synergy with GS Lab is promising, but we're going to have to just sort of figure out a plan. And yes, I mean, there needs to be a kind of an open community-based test setup that is going to be different than Kajit's, but there can definitely be value in getting some of this kind of scale testing into our testing plans for Aether. And it's kind of back to the, working with GS Lab with this group to sort of figure out a kind of a working plan, working cadence, and sort of the next targets, how to get us there.
All right, so we need to figure out how to translate this setup to an open community. All right. All right. So again, I will track down the email as soon as the call is over, and I will put it somewhere that everyone that needs to see it can see it, and we will discuss more deeply next time, and probably take it up with GS Labs between now and then as well. Okay. SD, anything else on the GS Lab front? It doesn't sound like there is right now. Okay, SD core update status. AJ, is that? Yeah, I'm guessing that's you.
So Ankur will provide update, Larry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Ankur, can you provide update? You're on mute.
Okay.
Ankur. Continue losing. Just let me just check. Okay. I do see him. Okay, I don't know what's the problem. Okay, let me just provide the update. So we are working on the release 1.4. I'm just sorry, yeah, and as a part of that, we're following the Intel security process to release the build. Some of the code is still in the review progress within the Intel. And we are expecting that it should get done by March end. And as a part of Pronto, as everybody knows, right, we have Pronto demos at the end of the month. Right, as a part of that, we will be releasing the remaining code, and as well as some new development we have carried out. We have added the framework to on-demand remove the UE subscription based on some of the network conditions, and we're using the framework provided by ROC. So ROC has provided some APIs where we can add or remove the subscribers on the fly, and SD Core makes use of those APIs. Yeah, that's the recent work, and we have fixed some of the NRF cache related bugs.
Did I hear NF related?
NRF.
Oh,
Yeah, NRF bugs. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry guys, my headphone had some issue.
Yeah, probably Ankur, you can just see if I have covered the work.
Yeah, like from the community, we keep getting issues reported or problems. So recently found like this an NRF cache related bug, and we have provided fix for that. And apart from that, yeah, UE removal of rogue UE you have already mentioned. That is framework we have provided on SD code side.
Larry, I made version wrong. It's like 1.3. We are working on 1.3 release.
not 1.4.
Yeah, 1.3.
Okay, I misheard. Sorry. Okay, good.
Regarding SDLE, which is Intel security procedure, we will be submitting slides to Intel this week and preparing release document mostly by this week itself.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Pretty much update for this week.
Good, thank you. Looking up at the
So there
back
were, sorry, Larry, there were some of the things which we did make progress with the Intel labs. I don't know if Gabriel is there. Gabriel, why don't you give update from your side? He had made some good progress on UPF side as well.
Hi everyone. Are you talking about the GPU path monitoring? Or?
Yeah. And I guess I did see a couple of pull requests from you about multiple UPF and some documentation cleanup.
Oh yeah, we have actually a presentation regarding that part for I guess it's for the second half of this meeting. So
I see. Okay. Sure.
Yeah, that's regarding the Ether in the box. Yeah, but I can talk about the UPF and BES itself. Yeah, regarding the like a few months back, we fork the BES repo from Berkeley into the OMEC project. Based on that, we have been kind of moving code around to kind of like avoid certain things that we were done in the past, like through patches, because we were, the BES repo was not kind of like managed by us. So based on that, we have been kind of like cleaning up the code, adding GitHub actions to kind of make sure that the base code continue working as expected. At the moment, one of the two most relevant features that are open for the UPF and the base itself is the integration of GTPU path monitoring feature. In the base module, the PR is open for that. In the UPF side, so for the PSCP component, that still needs to be open, the PR. The other big part that is there, the integration of CNDP. I finalized the review of the changes proposed to integrate CNDP. I approved them, but it would be good, to have another set of eyes to also take a look into that. That is the best component of the CNDP integration is completed, and then I am in the process of reviewing the UPF part of the CNDP integration. Yeah, so that's basically what I have so far regarding the UPF, and then there are a few kind of like PRs open there that I would need help with the review and approval.
That's good to hear. I want to, for me, the highlight of that, and I wanted to make sure I captured it correctly, is that you guys have I said internalized. You've taken ownership of BESS as the UPF implementation. Am I?
It's the other way. So we forked the base in the OMEC project, so that we can make the changes freely, because the original base repo is not maintained by anyone now for last 2-3 years.
That's exactly my point. BESS was sitting there orphaned, and now it's not.
But we don't touch the original repo because that's
fine.
not in our.
I mean, the point is, going forward, we use, assuming
Yes.
we can get it out of Intel,
Right.
we would use your BESS going forward.
Yeah, the UPF repo is already using the base that is part of the OMEC project there.
Let me try again, and I'm going to make sure I understand the scenario from an Aether SD core project point of view. We had a problem, which was we had a UPF that we're all depending on that was no longer being maintained by anybody. Worked, but was not being maintained. You have now, I'm assuming to a first approximation, forked it, and there is now a version of BESS that is being maintained.
In general, yes. So in general, yes.
Okay, and that seemed to be the high order important takeaway, independent of the specifics that improvements you've made.
Yeah, in general, that's what we did, but we forked it into the OMEC project itself. So the kind of ownership itself is part of the OMEC project.
Yeah, so anybody.
I missed that detail. It's forked into OMEC.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Thank you. Perfect.
So anybody, at ONF, when there are issues, could contribute to BESS update, right?
All right. So it's not strictly Intel. It's forked into OMEC. Perfect.
Yes,
that is correct. That is correct.
Yep.
I didn't quite grok that. All right. Good. I mean, exclamation point. All right. That's good. That's really good news. So Christian, since you're there, and maybe this is a continuation, but it's kind of I guess it's a different thing. It's on the backlog. Do you want to talk about the Intel Lab bullet up in the backlog, or postpone it for a future time?
What do you mean the Intel Lab in the backlog?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the agenda,
the,
and someone has entered in Intel Labs presenting what Intel and
Right. So we can present, Gabriel is leading this work, right? The work which is being funded by the Navy, and we're planning to present today, yes.
So just a pause before we jump into that. We have half an hour here. Are there any other, or less than that, are there any other pressing issues we need to talk about? Okay, and the second point is this is there value in describing this to a larger audience than the TST that included that we also have the users meeting, which attracts a far bigger audience? I don't know if this is the right answer that is. Maybe you don't have an opinion about that. All right, since we have the time, and not hearing any other topics, let's do the presentation. Do you want the screen?
Yes, please.
All right, it's all yours.
Okay. Yes. Let's see. This one. Oh, yeah.
Excuse me.
Oh, okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, so we wanted to share with the community an update of a project that we are working on. It is funded by the Navy Naval Information Warfare Center. And the main goal of this project is to enable differentiated security from an end-to-end perspective in a 5G network slicing. For this work, there is several people from the labs working on this, but it's also Andy is also helping us on this. And we have Gloria from the Intel Federal that is kind of like working as a project manager. And then for the entire project, we are also collaborating with the Northeastern University. They are working primarily on the RAN side of this work. So for today, you know, I want to get a high overview of the project itself, the different tasks that we have for this work, and the contributions. That's something that related to what AJ was mentioning about the different parts that we have been doing for Ether in a Box, and then on some general like summary at the end of if you have any questions about the project. So the goal of this project is to just to enable have this end-to-end network based on open source software, such that we can provide different slices with different levels of security. That means, you know, from including the RAN, core, and edge components. NEU is providing the RAN part. Basically, they are part of the Open Air Interface consortium, and they are basically contributing that they making the different changes that they are needed from the OAI part. Something like is relevant as part of the project itself, that is that we are kind of committed to all the different improvements that we make, or different feature additions that we make into this as part of this project. We are going to contribute back to their own community. So in our case, we are working with Ether, so all the contributions that we have, or all the different improvements that we're making here, are contributing back to the Ether community, and NEU is going to do the same for the Open Air Interface community. And then on top of that, there are a few specific tasks that probably I'm going to talk later in the tasks themselves. So as part of the whole project, we have 8 tasks. The first task, that's something we deliver by the end of last year, was just have a basic setup. So having Ether in a Box, having Open Air interface, and having the Open Air interface G0B with an USRP connected in, and then we are connected on OnePlus phone, and have this, you know, end-to-end basic communication up and working. That was part of the first task. Then second task is part of like, actually, let me go to the next slides. Yeah, so this is what I was mentioning at the beginning. So for the case of the Ether, this picture is highly likely you are very familiar with this. As part of the first task, we use the SD core and part of the ROC. but we didn't use the SD-RAN part itself. And for the RAN, we use the OpenAir interface. For this specific case, we use the tag for 2022 work week 45, and as a USRP, we use the X310. And with a phone with a OnePlus Nord CE 5G. And again, as a basic demo in the first step was just one single slice having this end-to-end communication, and such that the phone has access to the internet, and you know, that's what we proved. The other part is in general the tasks is that since we are in collaboration with NEU, the whole setup is duplicated. So we have one setup here in Intel Oregon, and there is another setup exactly the same in NEU in Massachusetts. So we delivered this task at the end of last year. Part of the second task is enabling RAN slicing on the G-Node side. So the goal of this, which is task 2 is also related to task 3, but task 2 is exclusive about the OpenAir interface component, where NEU is enabling kind of like the RIC agent or the E2 agents on the G-Node itself when it is deployed as a monolithic component, or in the CUDU when it is deployed as a split components. And then they are enabling these E2 agents to understand the ORAN is the service model, the cell configuration and control specification service model, for us to be able to kind of control the different slices from the RAN side perspective. Yeah, so for this, there are two kind of primary things that we are kind of looking into. First is enabling the capability of the policy ratio, basically the amount of PRBs that are assigned for one slice or another. And the second part, also we are looking into differentiate the type of scheduler that is being used depending on the slice that is requested. So as part of these kind of like policies, to see what kind of scheduler being used for either slice. As part of task 3, that is kind of like closely related to the task 2, but in our case, we are looking into the RIC itself and an XApp to control this RAN slicing part. For this, we look into the ONF RIC as a kind of like a base component for us to start working with. And another nice thing about that is that the ONF project already has one RAN slice management XApp there. However, this RAN slice management is not ORAN compliant, and that was some kind of proprietary solution that was kind of developed some time ago, before the cell configuration and control service model was released by the ORAN community. So there is some kind of proprietary solution for the 4G network. So what we're doing is trying to take the ONOS RSM XApp as a reference point and implement the cell configuration and control service model on top of that to be able to kind of like use this as a starting point for part of the work that we have in here. Yeah, so then task 4 is actually starting kind of putting all the pieces together, like from an end-to-end perspective. Here, as one component of task 4 is we need to deploy, or as part of the general project is we need to deploy at least 2 different slices, right? So for that we need to have at least 2 UPFs, because as how the architecture is so far, like, or the implementation is so far for the Aether is basically 1 UPF per slice. So in that case, we need additional UPFs to be deployed to be able to create additional slices. And then one thing is the deployment of the UPFs, and then we also need to do the creation of the slices. The deployment, we made a few changes to kind of deploy them through Aether in a box, and then the deployment of the slices, we are doing it through the raw control. But something additional that we're doing in here is, as the kind of the title of the project indicates, this is for a kind of like security perspective. So from that part, and that's also part of the task 7. The idea is we are interested in deploying this UPF in a kind of secure environment. And for that, we are also trying to kind of deploy the UPF not in AF packet mode as is currently being deployed with the current Aether in a box, but we are interested in kind of making this deployed with DPDK mode. And then we also need to make some necessary changes in the ROC, let's say, to understand when we want to create a new slice, whether we want to create a slice having let's say, unsecure UPF, or to choose the UPF that we need to for a given slice. So some changes on the ROC are also involved in there to kind of achieve this part in here. There are 2 tasks that we don't see them. So basically, which are tasks 5 and 6. Those tasks, as part of the contract, are considered as have like a CUI classification from the government perspective, which means that they are controlled and classified information. NEU has the capabilities to handle code that is classified under CUI classification. So that they are working in these 2 tasks. One task is about signature injection, a signature injection tool, and deep packet inspection. And the second task is about kind of like testing the capabilities of making sure that an slice is end-to-end secure. That's part of task 6, and those are tasks that NEU kind of is working on, and we don't have visibility into those tasks. Then task 7, as I mentioned, this is an end-to-end security perspective from different kind of slice security perspective. So as part of Intel, we are also looking into how we kind of secure the UPF. For this case, how we kind of deploy the UPF in a trusted execution environment, right? So we are looking into Grameen to kind of deploy this UPF. So when we kind of create these slices from the security perspective, we can create using a slice with a regular UPF, or we can use we can create a slice with a regular UPF, or we can create let's say, secure slice from the UPF perspective using a UPF that is kind of like a secure UPF. So that is the kind of like these are, and then the last task is basically have all these components together and do a demonstration of how this end-to-end security for different slices works. Having these different levels of security for each of those slices. Now, from the contributions perspective, as we have already submitted a few PRs that are already merged. One of the things that Ajay was mentioning, what we did is first, Andy created a initial patch to deploy a second UPF, and then we extended as to make it like flexible enough to deploy any number of additional UPFs. And so later on, this can be used for the additional slices. And besides, it's not just kind of the changes to Aether in a box and creating these additional makefile targets, but it's also kind of like updating the documentation on that regard. So how this can be used and how other users can be used. Another thing that we did is we are using kind of like Ubuntu 22 for this work. and we were noticing that deploying Ether in a box with Ubuntu 18 or Ubuntu 20, it used to work fine. But when deploying in Ubuntu 22, we used to have an error message saying too many files open in the stage when the SD core was being deployed. So for that, we kind of like found a fix, and also we submitted that that kind of change to the documentation. So if somebody else is interested in deploying Ether in a box in Ubuntu 22, just needs to execute those steps before executing that, and it's going to be good to go. The other part that we have submitted is so far in general, there is no in the Ether in a box repo, there is no synchronization between the values that are the SD core 5G values and the ROC 5G model values. So when a user deploys the ROC, the values are there don't even reflect what actually the values that are kind of like on configured as part of the core network. So this repo, this PR, what it does is basically before the ROC is deployed, it tries to synchronize its values based on the values that are for the SD core 5G values, sync them with the ROC, and then deploys the ROC with these values that are kind of like aligned with the SD core itself when the SD core gets deployed. The previous two patches were already merged. This third patch is under review. If I'm not mistaken, Sean already kind of like review it, and he's good. But I'm still waiting, for somebody else to also review and at some point get this merged. And besides that,
I'm just out of curiosity, who is reviewing and making the merge decision on that? Is that you, Andy?
Yeah, so far it's been me, the ones that have gotten merged, at least the first one. Yeah, I wasn't familiar with the Ubuntu 2204 patch. That wasn't me, I don't think.
Yeah, that was Ajay that helped me. I keep bothering him always to try to help me with all these patches, and he has been really helpful and trying to help me with all these different patches. So, but yeah, so this other one is under review. And then besides that, we have submitted some other kind of like documentation improvements that we think that as sometimes there were, in certain aspects of this work we are like a first-time users. So from that perspective, we go to the documentation at first step, and there are some things that they are not necessarily clear for us. So we have submitted like documentation improvements and kind of to give you an example here, I think it was last week that I submitted, I was looking into the SD core documentation, and the SD core documentation has some details about the Ether in a box, but that information on Ether in a box got kind of outdated because Ether itself has its own documentation, right? So what we did is just remove the Ether in a box documentation from the SD core documents, and just point to the Ether in a box where we have a single thing. So
that's a really good improvement, I think. So are you close to finished? Don't want to distract you.
Yeah, well, I can finish in like a few minutes, so that's fine.
Go ahead. I'll let you finish, and if there's time, I have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so give me just like, I want to try to wrap up in like 3 minutes. So hopefully no more than that. Yeah. So the ones that are here, all these kind of like it's more than 4 patches, but try to kind of compress on like more relevant. Most of them are basically merged. Only the sync up values, that's the only one that is under review. And because of the work that we are doing, again, there are several things that we still have internal that we are planning to open some PRs in the coming weeks. One of the things is like when starting this whole end-to-end documentation for the demo that we had to deliver on this last December, we use as a starting point UE run sim because we were having several issues with the communication between the phone and the OAI G Node B, So we were trying to use URL SIM as an alternative to make sure that all the connectivity, at least from the core network perspective, was working fine. And we have several documentation improvements on that regard. The other part that we're interested in is, again, submit documentation improvements for how, if there are users that are interested in deploying Ether in a box with a UPF in DPDK mode as well. So that could be there. The other part is at some point some other tests that we have been doing is the UPF itself has an slice mirroring component that is optional, but it seems like in it, as part of Ether in a box, that is not necessarily treated as optional. It's like treated as like a cap of 1 GB per second. So we want to make this option flexible, and please first show it in the UPF like an enable disable option, and of course then propagate that all the way to the SD core values, so the user that is using the UPF and the slice mirroring capability is able to see whether they are using the slice mirroring or not, so they can understand that if they are trying to run, let's say, a speed test, really high speeds, why the UPF is getting a certain limit if the slice mirroring is enabled. So to kind of make that visible. And the fourth part that is being kind of, we created like a packet generator, or the UPF already has a packet generator in there, but the packet generator is being deployed as together with the UPF, and it's typically used when the UPF is deployed in simulation mode. But to test how much overhead we have for when we deploy the UPF with a Grameen, we need to kind of have another tool, external tool. In the past, we were used to use a T-Rex, but it makes very complicated things. So I said, why don't we just, instead of using the UPF just for processing packets, in this case, we can use the UPF to generate packets. So what we did is we have a packet generator with the different scripts, such that we can deploy in another machine using DPDK, and we can use it to kind of make some type of speed test to make simplifications instead of using a third party like T-Rex software. Yeah, and then there are a few more things that we need to go on later on, but yeah, let me stop in here. So as an kind of like summary, so we are trying to kind of provide this end-to-end network slicing platform, try to secure the different entities, the different network functions that we have at the moment. So we started with the UPF. The plan would be to do something similar with other components of the user plane of the core network. Sorry, the control plane of the core network. And on top, besides that, we are also kind of interested in keep contributing these kind of like improvements that we're doing, in our case, directly back to the ONF community, or in the case of NEU, direct back to the OAI, or in general to the open source community. I don't know if you guys have any questions.
So I do. It's about the syncing the ROC with the SD core. So I'm looking at 3406, and not having looked at the code, I just want to make sure I understand what you've done here. So you've got a new script file that is it right to think of it as reading in SD core's value file and outputting the ROC JSON? Is that what it's doing?
Yeah, basically, yes.
Okay, good. That's nice. So,
yeah, but,
so authoritatively, the core value file becomes the authoritative definition of the states you wanted to start with.
Yeah, because that's what, when you deploy the core network, that's basically what the core network is doing, is basically whatever it does is the core 5G values are there, that's what it deploys. But just
everything that's dumped into ROC is just bootstrapping it so it's in sync with what's already in the core.
Yes, but just let me clarify something. So yeah, the script, this Python script, what it does is read both files. So it takes the SD core 5G values and the ROC 5G models. So you read both files, and then basically whatever is different in, or whatever is, and read the specific fields from this file, from the SD core values file, and just replaces specific fields of the other, the ROC file, let's say. So it doesn't really replace everything. So it's just some specific fields that are kind of like the important ones. So,
okay, so with time, one could reduce the JSON, the rock model file to sort of a minimal. That's not important. Good. That's a nice add.
Yeah, it may be possible at that, but at the moment I don't have that much, let's say, experience with the rock, and that's something that we are actually getting, getting more familiar with, because we do need to work with the rock.
What I'm thinking though is that JSON file represents a whole nother bunch of state that's outside of SD core, and it could change over time, and then you'd have to change the script. If we sort of tried to keep it minimal, that would simplify that. But that's a detail. We're at the end of the hour. Are there other pressing questions? We might pick this up again a little bit at some future meeting too.
Okay, sure.
No other questions at the moment. All right, so why don't we call it a day, since we're at the top of the hour, and thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.